All right.
And we're back.
And welcome to the show. Hope you all having a great time. I guess we should start off by talking about extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile. The new Ted Bundy movie.
Right. Or the Ted Bundy Netflix movie, as they're calling it on the streets.
right.
The streets of Columbus.
Starring Zac Efron. I would say
He was very good.
5 out of 5 bottle caps for Zac Efron.
Okay. Because I was going to say, wait a second, you told me lower than that for your overall opinion of the movie. And I'm like, well, what has changed in the short period of time?
Yeah, but his performance was
great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting, too, because I knew that James Hetfield was in the movie beforehand. That was, I think Zac Efron was talking to like Jimmy Kimmel or somebody and said, oh, yeah, James Hetfield's in this movie, and it was an honor to meet him because he's a huge Metallica fan. And then I was thinking, why is James Hetfield in this movie?
He should be in every movie.
Well, he's a police officer, which is interesting. But
yeah.
And he does a great job. He's in a couple scenes.
And he cleaned up his look a little bit to look the part. I think there was some shaving that occurred beforehand, and we didn't see tattoos sticking out from the police uniform.
Yeah, there's this weird connection because Joe Berlinger, the director, which most people know from the docuseries Paradise Lost, which had tons of Metallica songs in it. He also, him and some other guy, they were a documentary team. They did Some Kind of Monster, which was a documentary about Metallica. So it was probably just like, hey, James, if you want to be a part of this movie, it's going to be on Netflix. And there's a lot of people in this movie that you normally wouldn't see in certain roles. Like Sheldon, for example, is.
Yeah, you know what? I actually thought the surprise for me was it was pretty star-studded.
Yeah.
There was some big actors and big actresses in it, and I had it on my to-do list of things to watch. I'm not gonna lie, I was not super excited to watch it. For somebody who's spent so much time in one's life reading about Ted Bundy, I thought, oh, here's another Bundy thing. And some of the ones that have been done in the past, there's been at least one, maybe two Bundy movies, let's say, before. Those were not good, but those didn't have...
those were not good.
Yeah, those didn't have much of a budget, where this, you could tell they had a lot of time and a lot of money to spend on it. And who was the guy that played the judge? Because I can't think of his name.
John Malkovich.
Oh, John Malkovich. And he's fantastic as
John
the
Malkovich,
judge.
Another 5 out of 5 bottle caps.
Yes, absolutely. And Sheldon, whoever that guy is, 5 out of 5 bottle caps, I think. He was extremely believable as a prosecutor, and I like the way he decided to portray the character.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird thing. Jim Parsons is his name.
Okay.
Amazing actor, but because he's so great as Sheldon, you're always going to think of him as Sheldon. Just kind of like Kramer. Kramer was so good as Kramer, you're like, oh, Kramer. But yeah, John Malkovich, 5 out of 5 stars. I thought Jim Parsons, 5 out of 5 bottle caps. Lily Collins, which was the girlfriend, the Elizabeth Kendall.
Okay.
Liz, 5 out of 5 bottle caps for sure. And a lot of people kind of on the fence. We had Haley Joel Osment, which was the boyfriend after Ted Bundy.
Wait, is he the I See Dead People kid?
Yeah, and that's the thing is his face hasn't really changed much. So
he's gonna look like he's in his teenage years. I mean, he's got a young looking face.
Yeah, unless they start unless he gets attacked by a couple of house cats or something, he's always going to have that baby face. You can put the biggest beard on him. But I thought I thought all the actors in general were great.
I thought the Sixth Sense guy was very good, actually.
Yeah.
And it took me half the movie to figure out who he was and where I've seen him before, because we're talking about, he played that role as a little boy, and now he's a full-grown man. with a beard,
except for his face.
except for his baby face.
So what was interesting about this was it was released to some select theaters. The original release was at Sundance, but it was released in a couple select theaters. So very interesting there, because most of the time something goes to Netflix, that's where it's at.
Well, and is this a Netflix original?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but the fact that they put it out at a couple box offices, so it did make $100 and some $1,000 at the box office. But I think they just did that because I don't really know why, but I think it's kind of cool that you could go watch it in theaters if you wanted to. And why not make, if you're a big true crime fan, why not make a night of it? Go out, get some popcorn. And I thought the movie overall was, pretty good. I was rating it for a while 3 out of 5 bottle caps is what I was giving it. And the more I talk about it, and the more I think about it, and the performance, the ending was so good. Parts of the movie I think lacked, but the end of the movie to me was so good that I'm like, 3.5 out of 5 bottle caps is probably what I give it. But I think over time, this is going to be a movie that people talk about, and over time people will think, wow, this was a lot better than I thought it was.
Well, these types of movies, and I don't just mean like a true story, where you're really just going off of a true story. I don't mean that. I mean these serial killer type true stories.
Right.
They're hard to do, in my opinion. One, not only because the general outcome of everything that's going to happen or take place or where it's going to lead by the end of the movie.
Right.
But your main character typically, here was Ted Bundy. And he's not somebody that I like at all, ever have. And you're watching this person who is a horrible, horrible individual doing normal day, everyday stuff.
Right.
And I think that makes it tough to tell the story. Where, for me personally, it's a little different than, it's actually quite different than watching like a slasher type film. Because in this situation, you're watching a guy do everyday normal stuff, but on the inside, that's who he actually is a slasher.
Right.
So,
but it's tough here though too, because you can be fascinated by certain serial killers. A lot of people are fascinated by Bundy. Has never been in my top 3 serial killers that I was fascinated by. But he is fascinating. But this is also based off of The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy by Elizabeth Kendall. And so I think that's where some people have issue with the film is you don't see him commit any of these crimes. You don't really, they kind of make it blurry. Did he commit these crimes? Is he innocent? But in the reality of things, and in Elizabeth's reality, she didn't know. So now he's on trial, and when he became on trial, I think the trial was really important for her, because if other people found him guilty, then she wouldn't feel the burden. And I think she could live with that and then move on. So it is a very interesting take on it. Like I said, I think Zac Efron did a great job, and also John Malkovich was amazing. I mean, John Malkovich's character, what's so cool is at the end, I'm not going to give anything away, but at the end they do show real clips, because some of the trial was televised. And so the extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile, that comes right from lines that the actual judge said to Ted Bundy during the trial. So yeah, and Lake Sammamish.
Right
when they brought that up, I was like, oh yeah, that weird Sammamish. And we covered obviously the trilogy. We did 3 parts on Ted Bundy. So if anybody wants to listen back to those, they can. Yeah,
the only part I didn't care for, that I didn't think held up to the truth very well was the disco or the nightclub when he's in Florida, because the way that they portrayed it was he was still happy-go-lucky. He was partying it up. He was flirting with women and enticing women, and they were dancing with him and talking with him. And from everything I've ever read regarding that portion of his serial killing career, if you want to call it that,
right,
that's not who he was at that time. That he had spiraled completely out of control by that time, and so much to the point that people that were there that night, they said you could tell there was something off with this dude, and girls wouldn't talk to him that night. Women wouldn't talk to him that night. And so much, because keep in mind too, he goes to a college campus area, and he's going to go to this area and party with these young women that are, college age or early 20s.
Right.
But by this time, he's much older than that, because he's moved his way across the United States, escaped from prison twice, and by then he would have been maybe early 30s or something. So it was a combination of he didn't look the part for that bar, that nightclub,
right,
that nobody really wanted to talk to him, but it was also that some people said, how like with some of these individuals it's weird, because some of these people, I really feel like as they get older, they really start to, like, the evil that's inside of them seeps out into their appearance at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of people kind of said about Ted Bundy by that point, that there was something about him that was off. And the whole reason why he went into the sorority was because he couldn't get a woman there that night. That was his intention, to find a victim, somebody that would be willing to go home with him or get in his car, and they would be the victim. And he couldn't control his murderous rage and addiction, so much so that he had to find a victim when there was nobody that was willing to go with him. Because remember, he used to use a lot of ruses and a lot of some of his charm to just get women to go with him somewhere.
Right. And the other problem I had with it was Zac Efron as Ted Bundy's walking down the street, and all the girls are turning their heads. And I think that's just a mischaracterization of what happened. I think, was Ted an ugly guy? No, he wasn't ugly. He wasn't hideous. But he used his charm and his ability he was a
con man.
Yeah, his lying skills were amazing. So once you get inside that, and that's what's different. A lot of times men are so visual and so drawn by outward appearances that, once they start talking to a girl at a bar, that might not draw them in more.
Mm-hmm.
But women are like, well, he's decent looking, or he's somewhat attractive. Then they start talking, and the personality, the charm comes out. That makes him a more charming individual, more likely to go home with that guy. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that, like, there was a scene where he had to go to the library to study, and every girl he walked past, they were just kind of like goo goo gaga eyes over him. And it's like, that just didn't happen in reality. And I also think too, once the trial hit the television screen, that pretty much anybody that was on TV back in the day was a celebrity. So therefore he became a celebrity. But even like Charles Manson, which looks like a hideous little rat, had people going, oh my God, he's so attractive, because they hit that TV screen and now they become a celebrity.
Well, and for some reason, that I will never understand, sometimes, and it happens with men too, but we're less aware of it, but sometimes women become attracted to these horrible individuals that are on trial.
Yeah.
And I mean, Scott Peterson and
Turtleface.
There's a long list of that scenario, and like I said, men have done it as well with some of these trials. I don't know that you see what I would, in quotation, air quotes, say the groupies, but yeah.
But I think some of that, this is going to sound strange, but I think some of that is because that person is safe I mean, because one, they're behind bars, but they're safe because they're at a distance. They can communicate with somebody that they think they know. And really, the communication is just kind of a time waster or a time filler for the person that doesn't want to go out into the real world and try to discover somebody new. A lot of times you find out that somebody went through a very difficult divorce or a very difficult breakup, or even their partner passed away, and then they became fixated with one of these killers. And I think that's because they're using it as a mechanism to build some walls. And so, hey, I can talk to this person that I can never meet because they're behind bars. So Google users give it an 88%. IMDb gives it a 6.7 out of 10. The critics give it a 52, which is pretty low. And on Rotten Tomatoes, which I believe is the critics' choice, or the critics' score, is 57. So critics, not too good on this movie. It seems like people that watched it are a little higher. Like I said, I'll go 3.5, but ask me again in a year, and I bet money I'll say a 4 out of 5. And what score would you give it?
I think I'm right there with you. I thought it was really good.
It's definitely worth watching.
It was better than I had expected. And I think I had low expectations because I did have a couple people tell me that they didn't think it was very good.
It's under 2 hours. I definitely think it's worth the watch.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If for the true crime buffs out there, it's a very entertaining movie, and it's an interesting take. The angle that they chose to look at this crime or this monster through.
Well, and we could go through a lot of little details, but I don't want to give too much away. I really think this story develops and gets better towards the end, and one of the best endings of a movie of this genre that I've seen in a long time. But that's, I think, because they kind of play this whole, did he do it, did he not do it, for a while.
Right.
So, all right, so we had a lot of discussion lately on a case we covered, The Invisible Man.
Yeah. So there's been 55 blog posts regarding The Invisible Man. So if you go to the website, it's actually broken up into two different posts there. We have one that's Paul Raymond Herod, The Invisible Man. A lot of people posting there, as well as The Invisible Man, which is right underneath of it. A lot of people posting there. I wanted to take some time to address some things here because there were a lot of good questions and discussion regarding this case. And at some point there were so many posts that it got silly to me. I'm like, I just got to answer these in person with my voice rather than, I'm going to knock on everybody's door. And
hey, good to see you again.
Well,
I want to answer your blog post
regarding Detective Greg Lockhart, who is the lead guy on this case. Now, mind you, he's working a bazillion other cases at the same time.
That's a lot of cases.
But for him, I feel like on a personal level, this is number one. This is the one that keeps him up at night. This is the one that he probably spends a lot of his free time, what's supposed to be off-duty time,
right,
working on this case. And it's really interesting that he chose to go kind of outside of the box a little bit on this. Like the case is not just on Web Sleuths. It's there because he put it there. And for a time, he was answering people's questions on there. In person, which is the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But so he brought this case to us. I do want to address one thing real quick before we get into this, because I actually have probably spoke to Detective Lockhart for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hours once you factor in all the text and actual face-to-face time and phone calls.
Yeah.
So we had an hour-long show to do. We knew a whole bunch more about this story, but we had to leave some things out. We had to trim it down so it would fit that hour. And the whole goal with covering it is to, one, have put ears on this thing, so then we can in turn put eyes on the pictures that still exist of this Paul Raymond Herod to figure out who he is. But the first thing I do want to address is there have been some people that have made the suggestion that this guy, because we pointed out, it appears that he's running for his life and also running from law enforcement. And I want to really stress that law enforcement says that same thing as well. That's their speculation. And their speculation is that because whatever he is actually running from, they feel that he cannot go to law enforcement with to try to get protected regarding this. So that means that he's broke some laws. And yes, it's obvious. Really, the only one that we know of for certain is that he has stolen someone's identity. But some people have pointed out that maybe he might have been in witness protection, in the witness protection program. And we are actually doing this individual a disservice, because if he is running from his life, then we are putting eyes on his pictures and maybe identifying who he actually is and where he may be to this day.
That would be my luck.
Well, but the things that I want to address on that first is because some people have come at it pretty hard, and I was going to read there was one incredibly rude post, but I won't read that.
People come on.
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me find it real quick here.
It'll make me laugh.
I do have to find it.
You know, sometimes you the mean stuff is not bad.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is from somebody who will remain anonymous. But if you want to see their name or who they're pretending to be, you can go to our website and find this post. So the post reads, "The both of you are absolute plonkers. Sorry, but you are."
Plonkers.
Plonkers. If there's even a 1% chance that he is in witness protection, well then the idiot duo have put his life in danger. We're the idiot duo, by the way. If you're following along
I
at
thought
home.
it was you and Detective Lockhart.
I doubt you'll post this because you seem scared of a negative comment. But you guys, but really, guys, give your heads a good shake. It might wake up the last few brain cells you have.
Oh, really?
Okay, so I do want to point out here that Detective Lockhart brought this case to and has consulted with the FBI, first of all.
Right.
Okay, so at no point in his investigation that has lasted about 6 years has anybody told him, stop looking for this guy. He's in witness protection.
Right.
First of all. Second of all.
Which the FBI probably would do.
Possibly, if that's who, in fact, put him in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that would be my guess. If somebody was going to put somebody in witness protection, my guess would be the FBI would be number one. The thing here, though, is you got to use some damn common sense. And this is the age that we live in.
Well, maybe this guy should shake his head.
Well, this is the age that we live in. I think that sometimes we get ourselves into trouble because there is a phone. There's a device on us 24/7, and when we hear something or read something, sometimes we feel impulsively compelled to immediately put our thoughts out there.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I can't stand when people come forward with a really aggressive opinion. And this doesn't have anything to do with our website or our blog. It's more so just life in general. Somebody comes up with they're like, here's my point. This is what I think. And boom, I'm going to be aggressive and rude about it because I really have no other information to actually offer in this situation. Right. So I'm just going to be rude. Well, I got to point out,
in defense of this guy, though, or girl, whoever's being Captain Rude Pants, right?
Mm-hmm.
In defense of them, if we would have been more clear that Detective Lockhart did talk to the FBI, did talk with other law agencies, and we believe that this guy is not a part of a witness protection program, then this guy probably would have not made that comment.
I see your point, and that's a good point. However, the issues that I have with it is, one, a detective brought us this case. So to shake us down is giving no credibility to us or to Detective Lockhart either.
Right.
And so we got involved because we want to help with cases, and we took this one on. And I think that we might get some this thing might get some legs because of our show. At least I'm hoping so. But I just say use some common sense before you pull the trigger. And I've been guilty of it too. We're all guilty of posting something stupid, or I've probably posted something stupid in this actual thread here that we're discussing today.
Yeah, speak for yourself though.
But I think it is something that we all can fall victim to in a way, because there is a device on us right there. And then when we have these, this is a nonsense thought. I mean, here's the other thing. Think about this for a second. Whoever put this guy, let's pretend that he went into witness protection.
Mm-hmm.
So the agency that put him into witness protection decided that the best way for us to protect you and to give you a new identity is for us to steal an actual identity of a dead child. And that's going to be who you become.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any damn sense. They give you a fake identity. They give you one that has never existed, because that is your link for getting busted in the future. Is somebody going, you can't be Paul Raymond Harrod. Paul Raymond Harrod died in 1947. And, you can't use all their information under your assumed or your given identity, because that's the trail to getting you caught. So that's not how those agencies operate, first of all.
Right, but you're also assuming that the agency would have gave him a name of a dead child where, he could be a part of the witness protection program, then wanted it out of that, and then stole that name. And then
that's a leap. That's got to be a really big leap.
Of course it's a leap.
Right. I'm not saying that the agency gave him the identity of a dead child. I'm saying that according to this person who posted,
mm-hmm.
that's the assumption they're making. And what I'm trying to clear up is that is not how they would do that.
Right.
That's not how they would go about their business. And the other thing that I take a little bit of umbrage with
mm-hmm.
is the line, if there is even a 1% chance that he was in witness protection. Well, you put a really low number on that. 1% chance. Let's think about that too for a second, because we've covered a lot of missing persons cases.
Mm-hmm.
So if at any time we think that there is even a hint of a chance that they could have been moved for witness protection purposes, we shouldn't cover it.
Well, that'd be every missing person
right.
case.
It would eliminate every one of our missing person cases.
Right, because you'd have to say that there is a possibility.
Right. So
we
this
just don't
person,
have all
maybe
the
they just don't
information
like missing persons cases, which if you don't, that's fair. That's fine.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to prop up this guy too much or girl too much, but again, maybe they just didn't like this episode. We're having a bad day. Posted something that they wish they didn't post. So,
well, they can feel free to apologize at the website. Okay, so
don't apologize. Don't worry about it.
Right, but it's nonsense to be verbally aggressive to people.
Everybody has bad days.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
So
I was speaking for others because it's not. I have great days. Every day is great.
I do want to answer some of the questions so we can kind of clear some things up, and maybe this isn't the best platform for it, because I know that the big show is where most of the listeners are, but we have other cases we have to get to. So this is the platform that we're going to use. So somebody commented on the situation of working at a nursing home with the detective speculation that maybe he gained the knowledge and gained the information necessary by working at Skippy's father's nursing home.
Right.
And they asked, could it be true? How could he couldn't be? I'm sorry, I'm wrong post here. They want to know if it would be that easy to steal a new identity, and just with that simple situation. Right. And what I can clear up here is this. This is actually a fairly common thing, especially back in the day when somebody was trying to assume an identity and run from something. A lot of times, not necessarily regarding a nursing home or knowing a parent of the individual, of the identity that you're going to steal, But a lot of times back in the day, people would go to a graveyard and actually look for a headstone of a child that had passed away that would roughly be about the same age as them if that child had continued to live.
Right.
And the reason why they do that and seek out children is because a lot of times, especially with a young child, a social security number has not been issued to them yet. So technically, all you would need, and this is all that this Paul Raymond Herod, the Invisible Man, this is all he needed, and this is exactly what he did back then. He got enough information so he could secure a reprint or replica of the birth certificate for the actual Paul Raymond Herod for Skippy. So once he has that information and has that piece of paper, he can now use that to go and get a second form of identification, something that will have his picture on it. So this would be something as simple as a driver's license or state identification card, any number of things. Then he's now going to use that birth certificate in that second form of ID, and he's going to use that with the Social Security office so he can get issued a Social Security number that has never been issued for that individual yet. And we know that from what Detective Lockhart has told me, that this form was filled out and sent via mail, and he received a Social Security number back in the mail. And once he had that in 1987, at some point he starts using that identity. So that's how that went down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I thought that was a little bit of a leap as well. But when you have nothing to go on and there's so little known, I mean, heck, he's not even reported missing until 6 months later. Detective Lockhart has his hands full and tied with this case.
Well, that's where you would get a paper trail. And that's an interesting look at it, I think, because if this individual stole the identity just by simply walking through graveyards and looking at headstones, we'll never know who. You can't use that method to find this guy or find out who he actually was.
Right.
But if you can say, okay, well, he could have got the same information by actually working at this retirement community, well, there might be some kind of paper trail to this individual.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I mean, it's so much heavy lifting for Detective Lockhart because every situation, anytime you find something where you think there's a breadcrumb, you go, okay, well, now I don't know what year this guy would have worked there. I don't know what name he would have worked under. And on top of that, all these years later, most of these places don't have those records still available.
Right.
Another poster wanted to know, Detective Lockhart stated that most of his information came from Marla, who is the Invisible Man's wife, ex-wife, and her sister Kim. But he said that it wasn't clear if Kim provides information or what information that Kim provided. So just to clear this up, I think all of the information that he has received from her family is only coming from, those are the two key sources. So really everything that he is relaying to us came from them. I don't know what information came from Kim and what came from Marla. You see where I'm going with that?
Right.
So that kind of clears that one up a little bit as well. This is a brilliant question. And I was shocked and actually didn't realize that we didn't get to this in the episode. So Amy from Ohio, God bless you, wants to know, oh wait, she put Ohio in the post, but says, oh, she's originally from Indiana. Okay. So she wants to know.
We take back the God bless you.
Was the coworker that stood up with the Invisible Man at his wedding ever interviewed? If so, what did they have to say about him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is very interesting. This guy that was his best man at his wedding, remember, he had no family there. He had no friends there, but he had somebody that stood in as the best man.
Mm-hmm.
That man worked with him. They were co-workers, but that man was appointed by the pastor, by the person overseeing the wedding, because Paul wasn't going to bring anybody with him to the wedding. And so the pastor's like, well, we need a best man. Sir, would you do it? You know him from work. So this was not a situation where this guy knew Paul hardly at all. They just happened to work together, and he was doing a favor, probably more so for Marla or for the pastor rather than for Paul. Now, this guy was interviewed and actually identified through Greg Lockhart's hard work and outside of the box thinking. When he posted the picture online, he purposely posted so it was cut. So you're going to see Paul Raymond Herod, and then you're going to see the guy that stood in as the best man, because he knew that if even if nobody could identify Paul Raymond Herod, maybe somebody could identify that best man, because Marla couldn't even remember who it was. That's how unattached they were to this individual. So they found that guy. Relatives of his contacted the sheriff's department and said, hey, that's a guy in our family tree. And so they went out, and Detective Lockhart interviewed this individual. The individual couldn't remember the wedding and could not remember Paul Raymond Herod. Now, this guy is, I think he's 80. He's up there in age. But it was also such a small thing to him back then that why would he remember it? You know, it wasn't a memorable thing for him. He didn't really know this guy. And Lockhart said it was kind of funny because the guy wasn't convinced that they had found the right guy until Lockhart said, well, wait, I have a picture of you. And the guy's like, oh, holy shit, that is me. But yeah, I don't know who this guy is. And I believe that this individual's telling the truth per what Lockhart has told me.
Yeah, but you go, man, how many weddings have you been in? How many random dudes that you've never met, you're the best man in the wedding? You'd think you'd remember. That's kind of a decent story.
Well, yeah, but like I said, this guy's up there in age, and this wedding happened almost 30 years ago. Yeah. And it was a very small affair. I mean, it might have been something he was only at for an hour.
Right.
So, great episode, guys. Any chance there is DNA sitting around somewhere on him? Did his wife save any of his belongings? This is a good question. Yes, she did still have some of his belongings. And what I've been told, I don't know what information they have gleaned from that, but what I've been told is that a search warrant was issued, and they have confiscated some items from Marla. So, and that was very recent. So, one, I don't know that they would need to share any of that information with us. And two, they may not have any information as it stands now, because that's such a recent activity.
Right.
So, very smart, again, by Lockhart, because Marla, like he said, sticks her head in the sand, just doesn't do anything, doesn't really help with the investigation a whole lot. So he went out of the way and got a search warrant to confiscate some of those items. Has the detective used facial recognition and set up a social media account with the picture? Also, has the detective got old yearbooks from the possible high schools in Yonkers? The yearbook question. No, he's not received those yearbooks. There's, as he pointed out, multiple schools. He would like to receive yearbooks for about a 10-year time frame from each of those schools. Again, we don't know who this guy was before. We don't know his actual age, so that gets difficult.
Yeah, but he could do this through like classmates.com or something.
He has done some of that online, and I think on one of his vacation times when he's supposed to be off of work and relaxing and clearing his mind, I think at some point he's planning on going to New York for his vacation so he can go to those schools in person and see if they will hand over yearbooks, or at least let him look through them while he's there.
Well, some high schools will have the whole senior class pictures like on the walls. Mm-hmm. So he might have to go down all these hallways and look through all these old pictures.
Then regarding facial recognition, yes, that has been done. They did that, I think, early this year, like in January or February, where they did facial recognition, and one picture did pop up. It's an individual that was incarcerated at the time that the picture was taken. So the problem with that is they do look similar, but I think the individual that they found who was locked up, I think that there's some things that don't gel with the timeline for the Invisible Man. Meaning he may have been locked up and elsewhere in another state while the Invisible Man was doing things that we have documented and know actually occurred, like his marriage and living for a time in Indiana, things like that, work history and such.
Yeah. Well, these are all interesting. So we got any more?
Yeah, there's a few people that asked about the jacket that the Invisible Man is wearing in one of the pictures. So we only have a few pictures of the Invisible Man, but in one of them there is a jacket, and it has some type of logo on the, where there would be like a breast pocket.
Yeah.
So that logo, from what I've been told, is of the Chesty. I hope I'm saying that correctly, because I've only been told that word, but I remember Lockhart said that Paul Raymond Herod, the guy using that identity, worked for a Chesty's delivery service, or a Chesty's chips. They delivered potato chips and filled up vending machines and went to grocery stores, things of that nature. That logo on the jacket is for that Chesty's place that he worked at. And that, whatever that company is, if I'm in fact saying it wrong, is now defunct. They're not around anymore.
Right.
So we've cleared that up. Here's an interesting one. Hey guys, I did some digging and found that there is a Diana Ray Samples that passed away just a couple months ago in Wichita, Kansas. At the time of her death, she was 70 years old, so the right age to have been the ex-wife. Remember, we have Marla, who says that the Invisible Man referenced an ex-wife, that he had been married once before, and she remembered the name Diane or Diana Ray because of the weird spelling of Ray, R-A-E. And she believed that, not knowing when that marriage took place, she believed for whatever reason that it took place in Kansas. So this is very interesting. And I encourage everyone that has good information to send it to Detective Lockhart if it's something that you think is a real breadcrumb that should be investigated. This has been passed on to him. I sent this myself to him. But for any other type of discussion, any other questions, or just thoughts in general on this case, you can certainly put that on the blog. And I also recommend everybody go and read that as well, because there's a lot of interesting discussion on here. And we have these types of cases every now and then, Captain, where about once a month, we'll get one that really gets people talking.
Yeah. It's Tyler Davis case.
Yeah.
That got a lot. And a lot of the times it's good to speculate. I think it's good brain activity and leads us down different rabbit holes that maybe the detective would never think of. It's kind of like what we talked about, where sometimes detectives will go talk to psychics. It's not so much that they believe in the psychic, but what do they tell them, and does that lead them down a different path that they haven't been looking into?
Yeah, and then also John Douglas, the John Douglas show, got a lot of people interested. A lot of people loved that he came to the garage, which he didn't really come to the garage. It was it was a phone interview.
Oh, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, there were a couple people that said the interview sounds fake. In a sense, it kind of is. I mean, it's a real interview that I conducted on my cell phone, because that's the way that when Douglas reached out to the show, and I said, he's fucking John Douglas. So I'm like, however you want to do the interview, we'll do the interview. I'll make it happen. I'll get on a magic carpet and fly out there and hang out with you if you want to do it in person. But he said no. And we have multiple different techniques that we use for interviewing people that can't be in Columbus, Ohio with us for an actual face-to-face interview. The method he was most comfortable with, which is the most difficult for us putting together the show, is he said, just call me. Here's my phone number. Just call me on my landline.
Yeah.
And Douglas was he's such a nice guy. He was really nice to me during the course of the interview. So
he wasn't as nice to me. The reason why I wasn't on that episode is we said, hey, Mr. Douglas. And he said, call me John. And I go, okay, Jack. And he said, I said John, God damn it. And then he hung up the phone. That's not true. But
so if it sounds to anybody like it's fake. Well, it's because we take his parts from the phone interview, and we really do a lot. The captain does a lot of work to clean up my part, so you don't hear this fanboy on the phone with a bad connection talking to
and also
John Douglas.
Your ear will get tired of one timbre. So the timbre of John talking on the phone. Once your ears get a little tired of that, by having, instead of using the audio that we have from Nick in the phone call, we just have him re-say it. So it's exactly what he said on the phone. It's just now coming through with high quality mic quality. And so then your ear gets less tired of hearing the phone timbre.
Well, and John too doesn't necessarily hang on my words to get to his answer. And I think people got that vibe listening to the show. This dude, like, I feel like his brain has just absorbed so much information in these cases over the years.
Yeah.
That it's like when you ask him a question, it's like winding up a toy that's just going to go bonkers as soon as you hit the start button. You know, he's just like, the words can't get out of his mouth fast enough. And a lot of that's probably because he's recalling from multiple things: face-to-face interviews, police reports, autopsy reports, previous interrogations that he's read through, the transcripts, the court proceedings. He's pulling information from so many different boxes all at once that I think he gets a little caught up in the words at times. But
yeah, but it's similar to when we meet people that listen to the show and they want to talk to us about the show, and that's also going to be about cases. And then it becomes, well, let's talk a little bit about this case and a little bit about this case. And if those cases are familiar in your brain, then it seems like almost as if you're all over the place.
Right.
But because I've had so many times where somebody will be like, wow, you know a ton of stuff, and you're like, well, that's because we covered the case and we produced an episode, and so all those things kind of stick with you once somebody brings back up a case. It might take a minute. Oh yeah, where was that case? Oh yeah. What was the date? Oh yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, go, boom, 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 and your brain is just exploding.
And one final one here, Captain, because I love this one. This is a great question. Great observation as well.
Let's end on a negative one.
So the Dibster, I like that name. The Dibster says, couldn't help but notice John Douglas said that he thinks the family had nothing to do with the JonBenet Ramsey murder.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's not often someone close to a case will claim that. Is there anywhere he elaborates on this further? So, and I posted a response to that one. He has a book called The Cases That Haunt Us, and it's a collection of different cases. Some that he was very close to, and some that he's just looked into from afar. But it's a fascinating book because a lot of the cases that are in there, if not all of them, are all cases that are pretty well known to not just true crime
but the public,
people, but the general public as well. And so if I'm recalling correctly, I believe he has a whole chapter in there on the JonBenet Ramsey case and his thoughts. And he actually met the father. He actually met John Ramsey.
Yeah, I have not read that book yet, but that's one I should put on my list.
My caveat there, where I big fan of John Douglas. I respect him immensely.
Mm-hmm.
My caveat there is the things he says about the Ramsey case is very fascinating. And yes, he definitely has some much needed insider information that I'm glad got tossed out there in the public through his book. Mm-hmm. But my only caveat there is just keep in mind that he was not the only retired FBI agent that was asked to be hired by the Ramsey family.
Right.
There were other individuals that turned it down. Now that doesn't mean that John Douglas is wrong, because obviously we don't know the truth.
Well, you can be hired by somebody and believe that they're guilty.
Well, and he does say in the book that, I told John Ramsey to his face, or told him on the phone, yeah, I have reservations about going out there and meeting with you, because of where I think the case stands. But also, I want to let you know, just because you're hiring me doesn't mean that I'm going to be on your side.
Right.
So you can hire me, but I want to warn you that you might not like my findings.
Right. Very similar with Courtney Love in the Kurt Cobain case.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring a private investigator and him telling her, hey, just because you pay me doesn't mean I'm not going to follow the evidence. So, but interesting to hear that, because as I go back and forth on the John Benet Ramsey case, to have an expert's opinion, even though, like I said, I haven't read the chapter yet, he kind of nonchalantly says, hey, they were re-victimized, and that he didn't believe that they had anything to do with the murder.